Merci beaucoup pour l'invitation à participer à ce rassemblement. Je suis très heureux d'être ici en compagnie d'innovateurs sociaux dynamiques et visionnaires du Québec. And I hope you don't mind my hat, but I'm channeling my inner Leonard Cohen today. Are you like me? Do you feel that despite your best efforts and indeed successes that you've hit a brick wall? Do you feel like me, frustrated by the limited impact you and others have had? You may have mounted a successful advocacy campaign. You may have seen your public education ads go viral. You may have created a large coalition or pioneered a social program, mobilized new funds, but the status quo remains the same. It's barely budged. Social and economic justice hasn't increased. Power hasn't shifted. The old paradigm survives, and the sharp, distinctive edges of your bold, inventive solution is in danger of being eroded, isolated, or forgotten. Right? I think many of you are nodding. I think we have far too many orphan innovations that have been proven to work but are not spread far and wide enough for everyone who should to benefit. So I've spent the last 10 years exploring the emerging field of social innovation in order to understand why some good ideas take hold, whereas others don't spread as far and wide as they should. I mean, you'd think, given the time and the attention and the money, that we would have absolute poverty under control by now, or child abuse, or food security, or deforestation, or living conditions for First Nations people, or any number of other social, environmental, and health challenges. I've paid particular attention to the emerging world of social innovation because I was looking for useful, practical insights about social change that lasts. So, not the short-term success like fulfilling all the terms of our grants or the splashy campaigns or organizational awards or even personal awards, but the lasting impact that shifts culture, that changes habits, attitudes, that changes the hierarchy, and the way we allocate resources. I've met over hundreds of social innovators from around the world, and I've tried to apply their lessons and their insights to my own work, to our own work at Plan. And in my experience and my observation in trying to do that, lasting impact, and you know this, but lasting impact requires more than coming up with a new idea and proving that it works. As tough, I'm sad to say, as tough and time-consuming and lengthy as that may be, it's not enough. So neither is novelty, or dedication, or hard work, or loyal supporters, or a sophisticated strategy, or money, or prototyping, or the robust application of the latest technologies. Are they essential? Yes. Are they a good start? Certainly, but they're not enough to tip a system, to change behavior, and to ensure or secure durable change and lasting impact. Despite you introducing a shiny new solution, the world does not, at least most of the time, does not beat a path to your door. So, lasting impact doesn't happen by accident. We need to deliberately nurture the conditions in which it can flourish. And I think these conditions hinge on two actions. The first, becoming a wise traveler. And the second, working beyond our wildest imaginings, not only with friends and allies, but also with opponents, adversaries, and strangers. To illustrate, I want to talk to you a little bit about the backstory to the creation of the world's first registered disability savings plan. We call it the RDSP. I want to tell you about how tough it was to move beyond the rhetoric of collaboration to the messy, hard work of working with people you don't know, don't like, and don't trust. The RDSP is the only one in the world. It's a poverty-fighting tool. I don't know if you know much about it, but I'll just tell you just a little bit. It has matching grants as high to 3-to-1, and a plus $1,000 bond that's available annually for 20 years for everyone who qualifies in Canada. To give you an idea of how it works, let's take a baby who is born with Down syndrome in Montreal today. If her family or friends and supporters invest the equivalent of a coffee and a bagel, that's all, every day for 20 years, she will have $250,000 in her RDSP when she turns 30. If she doesn't withdraw it all at once, her RDSP will be worth more than $500,000 over her lifetime. That's not bad for a $30,000 investment. It's almost too good to be true, isn't it? But it's not true. The RDSP began, but it is true. The RDSP began in 2008. I now meet people with disabilities all across Canada who have over $50,000 in their RDSP accounts, and they are still able to retain their government benefits. There are no clawbacks. There's no asset limits as it relates to it. And the RDSP is available to over 700,000 Canadians with disabilities. However, if you'd have seen our original proposal, you would not have recognized this majestic potential. The truth is, the RDSP would still be a pipe dream if it had been left solely to me or to Plan, the social enterprise that I helped found over 25 years ago. Because our original idea was like a big, huge, flawed piece of marble. We could see a kind of savings plan in the marble, but nobody else could. It was fused with two other big ideas that we had, a pooled investment fund and a no-one alone fund, and we couldn't imagine any of them proceeding without the other. It was very hard to explain. In fact, nobody could understand what we were talking about, and we spent years paddling our own canoe in the wilderness until we learned to become wise travelers and started to pay attention to all the inhabitants in the ecosystem surrounding this idea. And we discovered that it takes three distinct types of social innovators or social entrepreneurs to achieve broad systemic change: disruptive innovators, bridging innovators, and receptive innovators. I want to talk to you first about disruptive innovators. There's probably a lot of them in this room. My favorite nickname for disruptive innovators is passionate amateurs. And here's the reason. There are only, in my opinion, two purposes to being human: to love and to create. Do you know the expression necessity? You have that in Quebec. Necessity is the mother of invention. Well, if that is true, then love is the other parent. Love supercharges it. That's the powerful combination that causes disruption that leads to lasting impact. Passionate amateurs are inspired by love and motivated by necessity. Someone or something they care about is vulnerable, under siege, in trouble, and they have no choice but to respond. In the Laurentian Highlands, which is the headwaters of so many great Quebec rivers, the water is pure and life-giving, isn't it? And we know that if we treat that water with respect at its source, it will nourish everything and everyone that lives along its banks, all the way through its river basins and tributaries, all the way through to the mouth. Well, passionate amateurs inhabit the sacred headwaters of social innovation. In my opinion, the richest source of social innovation are those individuals, families, neighbors, and so-called ordinary citizens who are constantly working to make the world better. And I can't imagine, frankly, any of the social innovations and inventions and enterprises in Quebec taking place without them. The innovations of passionate amateurs are pure and life-giving too, and many of them eventually migrate to the nonprofit sector, to business, and to the public sector. And some are destined to become our new institutions. But we have to remember where they came from, because passionate amateurs can't quit. They're prepared, aren't they, to pour their life's energy into resolving the challenge. Their commitment is freely given, way beyond the boundaries of job descriptions, office hours, strategic plans, funding, fashion, and political priorities. Many of you, I know, in this room are disruptive innovators. You challenge the prevailing way of doing things. You shake the lethargy off the status quo. You wrestle a big idea to the ground. You make it concrete with very limited resources. And you prove it work. You may even replicate it. However, I'm sure you've experienced that despite those successes, your model and solution does not easily become the new standard. The implications of what you've done are ignored or misunderstood. In my case, they've often become a threat to the system. Have you experienced that? It's not easy to move from the margins to the mainstream with a big idea. And that's why bridging innovators are so important. Plan was going nowhere with our bulky, three-pronged RDSP kind of proposal until the Canadian Foundation convened on our behalf a bunch of experts, a focus group. And these experts gave us some very blunt advice. They said, choose one and park the other two. Fortunately, we made the right choice because the reaction from our allies and from the government eventually changed from, I don't understand, to, this is common sense. Why hasn't it been done before? The momentum shifted thanks to bridging innovators, and we began to have a different kind of conversation. Bridging innovators excel at spotting big ideas. They leverage their connections, their reputations, and their resources. They translate and interpret the value of the disruptive innovation to the people in the system. And equally important, they translate the imperatives of this and the subtleties of the system to the disruptive innovators. So they don't take it personally. So we don't take it personally. Foundations, as you know, in Canada, are great bridging innovators. The McConnell Foundation in Montreal has set the standard for that in certainly across Canada and much of our work. They are broker, funder, coach, buffer, champion, and sometimes peacemaker. Our RDSP journey involved lobbying 3 different prime minister's office, Chrétien's, Martin's, and Harper's. But it wasn't until the current government was elected that the possibility of establishing a disability savings plan really took off. And one of the reasons that happened is because another bridging innovator from another foundation had connections to the Conservative Party. We certainly didn't. And literally within weeks of the election in 2006, we were ushered into what we realized was the war room, the command center for the election campaign, and met somebody who was an assistant, campaign assistant, to the Minister of Finance, Jim Flaherty. Anyway, to make a long story short, she made a phone call when we were meeting with her, and she said, "You know that thing I was talking to you about? Well, I think I've got something for you." Put the phone down. She looked at us and she said, "Leave it to me." And within 2 months, Flaherty had announced the Registered Disability Savings Plan in his first budget. I think she phoned him. And she knew something that we didn't know at the time, which was that he had a son with a disability as well. Bridging innovators are the link between disruptive innovators and a third critical group, receptive innovators. Some people call them institutional entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs, but they are key. The people who work in systems are key to implementing big ideas and spreading solutions far and wide. They have knowledge about how the system works that we would never, ever be able to get. They have a knowledge of the key levers to advance the system. They're navigators. They know the formal channels, the back channels, the informal channels, who the key players are, where the snags are, what the right wording is, the best timing, etc. And typically, they remain anonymous, working completely behind the scenes. But they're proof that social change does not have a dress code. They are, these people, and you have to find them, they're as passionate, talented, and they shiver with as much commitment as you do. Often they're just treading water, waiting for us to discover them and to trust them. So here's the thing, less than 18 months after the Disability Savings Plan was approved, public servants in 2 federal departments and 13 provincial and territorial governments turned the traditional welfare system on its head and created new procedures for the first RDSP in the world. Incidentally, one of the ways we did that was by plan hosting our own federal provincial conferences. The federal government said we can't do this, and so we decided, we call it do-it-yourself public policy. So we hosted our own conference. We worked very closely with officials from the province of Quebec, and we employed something. So it wasn't simultaneous translation, it was something that Jacques Dufresne, who is a great philosopher, social commentator here in Quebec, taught me, which is dynamic bilingualism. And so we used that. Anyway, it worked so well that the provinces and the feds asked us to host some other federal provincial conferences. So maybe that's the way we got to solve some of those government problems, is just do it ourselves. I just want to say that today there's over $2 billion collectively in RDSP accounts across the country, and we estimate the eventual market to be $15 billion. And we're already working on plans to mobilize those resources and to use it as a social investment fund with businesses who employ people with disabilities. So you can see how that money can begin to work that way. So clearly, the expertise and the resources to achieve that kind of impact and durability and scale was way beyond our capacity. And here's the thing, the final idea was much better than the original one that we had. Our rough block of marble was sculpted into something much more beautiful thanks to the passionate amateurs who were also bridging and receptive Michelangelos. In reality, there's a passionate amateur in each of us. Whatever role we play, our effectiveness improves when we fall in love with the issue, when we fall in love with its mystery, its brokenness, and its contradictions. And without that love, we are more likely to walk away from an innovation, to give up, or to get distracted by a search for more technology and technique. The necessity to do something is usually clear. We have more than enough studies, more than enough reports, projections, and statistics about what is wrong and horrible and not working. We now need to envelop all of that in love. The canoe is Quebec's original, in my opinion, original and preeminent social innovation. There is no other invention that has impacted our country so profoundly and for so long. I think the canoe defines us more as a country, more than hockey, in my opinion. Whether you use an ice canoe to get across the St. Lawrence River in the winter, or a birch bark canoe, or a clipper, or a kootenai canoe in the Rocky Mountains, or a cedar dugout canoe, or a kayak, or a bidarka, canoes are a gift given to us by First Nations, Aboriginal inhabitants, and spread by French settlers. Samuel de Champlain noted the canoe's elegance and speed and remarked that it was the only craft suitable for navigation in Canada. The early explorers could not negotiate our country with their heavy, clumsy vehicles, and they quickly turned to the birch bark canoe. This adaptation of a local, innovative technology by white explorers has no counterpart anywhere in the world. Can you imagine the Courrier de Bois without canoes? They could handle 22 men could handle 25-foot freight canoes and portage for hours with them. So, the canoe is certainly a technological innovation, but it is also the original collaborative vessel. The canoe facilitated a sense of community and helped imprint a social contract of egalitarianism, inclusion, and peacemaking. We survived and thrived in a harsh climate with a small population and very limited resources, in my opinion, thanks to the metaphorical and literal presence of the canoes. So voyageurs and explorers needed the canoe, but so do social entrepreneurs and social innovators. The big difference is that nowadays, our canoe is more likely to be a spirit canoe. You can imagine for yourself who is on board your spirit canoe. Many passengers are not of your choosing. They include people you're suspicious of, or who you don't like, who you are certain have created the perilous conditions for your journey, who are oblivious to the challenges you face, you think they are, and who you think aren't pulling their weight. Included in this spirit canoe are people that you have betrayed or who have betrayed you, intentionally or otherwise. And yet, in order not to capsize in the stormy waters we find ourselves in, we must paddle in harmony, spelling each other off when we get tired, sharing resources, surviving despite or maybe because of our differences. It's actually very simple, isn't it? Isn't this what we teach our children to get along? We will, in my view, only reach the just society we desire only by paddling together. I think this is the most profound social innovation already invented, already proven. This is the one that we must spread. The rest, in my opinion, are details. Now, there's one other very, very significant additional aspect to spirit canoes that I must tell you about. It was shared with me by a Northwest elder on the coast of British Columbia by the name of Cecil Paul. And he said to me, in a spirit canoe, there is always room for one more. So my very best wishes to the great entrepreneurs and innovators and ingenious creative people in Quebec. My very best wishes for making room for one more, and one more, and one more. Merci.